Roland and the Courage Bell. The fort was darker tonight. Not scary dark, just bedtime dark. The kind of dark that made the lantern feel extra important. Peyton was already tucked into her sleeping bag, hugging her pillow like it was a helpful secret. Jesse was lying on his back, staring up at the blanket ceiling like he was trying to count the knots holding it together. Oliver was whispering something to Peyton, probably checking in like he always did. Roland slipped into the fort last. He didn't announce himself, he never did. He just quietly appeared, sliding into his sleeping bag like a bookmark placed carefully back into a book. Granny T ducked inside behind him and settled into her chair with a soft little sigh. The lantern rested in her lap, unlit. For a moment, everyone was quiet. Then Oliver's voice rose gently. "Roland, you okay?" Roland shrugged. It was a small movement, barely there. Peyton watched him. "You're being extra quiet." Jesse rolled onto his side. "He's always quiet." Roland's eyes flicked down. His mouth opened like he might say something, then closed again. Granny T didn't rush him. She simply waited, patient as a warm blanket. Finally, Roland whispered, so softly it almost didn't count as sound. "I tried to talk today." Everyone stilled, even Jesse. Roland stared at the zipper of his sleeping bag, fingers tracing it like it was safer than eye contact. "But nobody heard me," he said. Oliver's face softened. "Oh." Roland swallowed. "It's like..." His voice got smaller. "It's like I'm not there." Peyton's eyes widened, worry rising. Jesse frowned, confused and uncomfortable with feelings he couldn't punch. Granny T leaned forward slightly. Her voice stayed gentle. "If today felt too big," she said softly, "we'll make it smaller, one story at a time." Roland didn't look up, but his shoulders loosened a little, like the words gave him permission to breathe. Granny T turned the lantern's knob. Click! Golden light bloomed inside it, slow and calm, like a sunrise that didn't need to hurry. And just like that, the story world woke up. The fort felt bigger, not louder, just deeper, like it had room for quiet things to exist without being swallowed. The air smelled like paper and rain and the inside of a cozy old closet where blankets were stored. The lantern glow spilled across the floor, and the shadows shaped themselves into a path. Soft, safe, waiting. Granny T's voice became the story. "Tonight," she whispered, "I'm going to tell you about a boy who turned invisible." Roland's eyes lifted just a little. Jesse sat up. "Invisible?" Granny T nodded. "Not on purpose." The lantern pulsed once, and the story began. The boy who turned invisible. Once upon a time, in a town where the streets were made of smooth gray stones and the lampposts glowed like sleepy moons, there lived a boy named Roland. Roland wasn't loud. He wasn't fast. He wasn't the kind of kid who filled a room. Roland was the kind of kid who noticed things. He noticed when a bird's wing was bent. He noticed when someone laughed too hard, like they were trying to hide something. He noticed when the air changed before a storm. Roland didn't talk a lot, not because he had nothing to say, but because his words felt important, like they needed to be placed carefully, like fragile things. One afternoon, Roland was walking through the town square carrying a small basket of warm bread rolls for his family. The square was busy. People rushed past with baskets and bags and loud voices. Roland moved carefully through the crowd. He didn't want to bump anyone. He didn't want to spill the bread. He didn't want to be in the way. As he walked, he saw something on the ground, a tiny creature, small as a mouse, with wings like a moth. It had fallen into a crack between stones and was struggling to climb out. Roland stopped. He crouched down. He reached a hand toward it, slow and gentle. "Hey," he whispered. "It's okay." The creature's wings trembled. Roland carefully lifted it out and set it on the edge of the stone. It blinked at him, dazed. Roland smiled a little. Then someone bumped him from behind. "Move!" a voice snapped. Roland stumbled. The bread basket tilted. One roll fell out and bounced across the stones. Roland blinked, startled. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but the person was already gone. Roland bent to pick up the roll, and that's when something strange happened. The crowd kept moving around him, not carefully, not kindly, like he wasn't there at all. Someone's elbow brushed his shoulder. Someone stepped too close to his foot. Roland moved back, confused. He stood up and tried to slip away, but as he walked, people kept cutting in front of him, cutting through his space, cutting through his path. Roland frowned. He held his basket tighter. He tried to speak. "Excuse me," he said softly. No one turned. Roland tried again, louder. "Excuse me." Still nothing. His stomach tightened. He lifted his voice even more. "Excuse me." A woman passed right in front of him without even blinking. Roland stopped. His heart thumped. He looked down at his hands, and that's when he saw it. His fingers were fading, not disappearing fast, just slowly turning see-through, like fog. Roland gasped. He looked at his arms. His sleeves were still there, but underneath, his skin was becoming faint, like a pencil drawing erased too many times. Roland's breath caught. He tried to wave his arms. He tried to step into someone's path. No one reacted. It was like Roland had become invisible. Roland's chest tightened with panic. He backed away from the crowd, clutching his basket like it was the only proof he existed. He hurried down a side street, then another, until he reached a quiet alley lined with ivy. He pressed his back against the wall and stared at his hands. They were almost transparent now. Roland swallowed. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to fix it. He didn't know if he was going to disappear forever. A small sound came from the shadows. A soft tap, tap, tap. Roland froze. Then he saw it. A cat. Not a normal cat. This cat was black as ink, with eyes like lanterns. It walked towards him slowly, tail flicking like a question mark. Roland held his breath. The cat stopped in front of him and stared straight at his face. Then it blinked once and spoke. "Ah," the cat said, voice low and calm. "You've started to fade." Roland's mouth opened. No sound came out. The cat sat neatly and wrapped its tail around its paws. "Don't panic," it said. "That only makes it worse." Roland swallowed hard. "You can see me?" he whispered. The cat nodded. "I can always see quiet kids," it said. Roland's eyes stung. He looked down at his hands again. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. "I was just trying to not take up too much space," the cat finished gently. Roland blinked. The cat's eyes softened. "That's how it starts," it said. "A little shrinking, a little stepping back, A little swallowing your words. Roland's throat tightened. He hugged the breadbasket closer. The cat leaned forward slightly. Your invisibility isn't a punishment, it said. It's a spell. Roland's eyes lifted. A spell? The cat nodded. A spell you didn't mean to cast. Roland's voice trembled. How do I stop it? The cat stood. Follow me, it said. Roland hesitated, but the cat was already walking, confident as moonlight. Roland followed. They went through the alley and into a narrow passageway between two buildings. At the end of the passage was a small door Roland had never noticed before. A wooden door, painted the color of warm gray. Above it hung a sign carved in simple letters. The Whisper House. Quiet is welcome here. Roland stared. The cat pushed the door open with its paw. Inside, the air smelled like old blankets and chamomile tea. The room was dim and cozy, filled with soft chairs and shelves of little boxes. The walls were lined with wind chimes, but they didn't make noise unless you touched them. In the center of the room sat a person in a hooded cloak. Not scary, just calm. Their face wasn't hidden. It was gentle, kind, like someone who listened for a living. They looked up as Roland entered. Hello, they said warmly. You've come because you're fading. Roland's mouth went dry. He nodded. The cloaked person gestured to a chair. Sit, they said. Roland sat. The cat hopped onto the table and curled up like it belonged there. The cloaked person studied Roland's hands. They were nearly invisible now. The person nodded slowly. You've been using your quiet spell too much, they said. Roland frowned. Quiet spell? The person smiled softly. Quiet is a gift, they said. But when you use it to hide, you start to disappear. Roland's eyes stung again. He didn't want to disappear. He just didn't want to be annoying. He didn't want to be wrong. He didn't want to interrupt. The cloaked person leaned forward. Do you know the Whisper House rule? They asked. Roland shook his head. The person held up one finger. When you need to be seen, they said gently, you do not shout. Roland blinked. The person held up a second finger. You do not explode, they continued. Roland thought of Jesse, and his stomach fluttered. The person held up a third finger. You do one small brave thing. Roland whispered. Like what? The person reached into a drawer and pulled out something small. A tiny bell. Not a loud bell, a soft bell. It was made of silver, with a ribbon tied to it. The ribbon was the color of moonlight. The cloaked person set it on the table. This, they said, is a courage bell. Roland stared. It doesn't ring unless you mean it, the person added. Roland's fingers hovered over it. His hand was almost invisible. He touched the bell gently. Nothing happened. The cloaked person smiled. It doesn't ring for fear, they said. It rings for truth. Roland swallowed. The person's voice softened. When you want to be seen, they said, you say this sentence. Roland's heart pounded. What sentence? The cloaked person spoke slowly, like they were giving Roland a key. I have something to say. Roland's stomach flipped. The words felt too big, too bold, too much. The cloaked person nodded, like they understood. You don't have to say it loud, they said. You just have to say it real. Roland looked down at the bell, then up at the person, then at the cat, whose eyes were warm and steady. Roland's throat tightened, but he tried. His voice was small, almost a whisper. I have something to say. The bell gave the tiniest sound. Ting. Roland froze. The sound wasn't loud, but it was clear, like a drop of water in a quiet room. The cloaked person smiled. Roland stared at his hands. They were returning, not all at once, but slowly. His fingers darkened back into solidness. His skin became real again. Roland's breath caught. He tried again, voice a little steadier. I have something to say. Ting! The bell rang again, and more of him returned. Roland's shoulders loosened. The cloaked person nodded. That's the rule, they said softly. One small, brave sentence. Roland swallowed. But what if people don't listen? He whispered. The cloaked person's eyes softened. Then you ring again, they said. Not louder, just steadier. The cat's tail flicked. And if they still don't listen, the cat added, you find someone who will. Roland's chest ached, not in a bad way, in a way that felt like something opening. The cloaked person reached forward and gently tied the ribbon around Roland's wrist. The bell rested against his skin, warm, solid. Your voice matters, the person said, even when it's quiet. Roland nodded slowly. He stood. He wasn't invisible anymore, not fully, but he felt more real, like he belonged in his own space. The next day, Roland walked into class. The room was loud. Kids talking, chairs scraping, pencils tapping. Roland's stomach tightened. He felt the old habit rise. Stay quiet. Stay small. Don't be in the way. He looked down at his wrist. The courage bell was there. He took a breath. His teacher asked a question. Roland knew the answer. He raised his hand. It felt impossible. His hand trembled. The teacher looked around the room, not seeing him at first. Roland's chest tightened. The old fading began at the edges. Roland swallowed. Then he whispered to himself, I have something to say. He didn't shout. He didn't slam his chair. He didn't disappear. He stayed. He lifted his hand again, just a little higher. The teacher's eyes found him. Yes, Roland? Roland's heart pounded, but he spoke. Quiet, clear, real, and the room listened. The lantern glow softened. The whisper house faded. The cat's lantern eyes disappeared into warm shadow, and suddenly the fort was just the fort again. Blankets overhead, sleeping bags below, Granny T in her chair. Roland blinked slowly. He felt like he'd been holding his breath all day, and only now remembered he was allowed to let it out. Granny T watched him gently. Roland swallowed. Then, in a voice that was still quiet, but stronger than before, he said, I have something to say. Everyone looked at him immediately. Not because he was loud, but because he mattered. Roland's cheeks warmed. He hesitated. Then he whispered, I don't like when people talk over me. Peyton's eyes widened. Oh. Oliver nodded fast. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll pay attention. Jessie frowned, guilty. I didn't know. Roland shrugged, small, but his shoulders looked lighter. Granny T smiled, like the lantern had just done its job. That, she said softly, was brave. Roland blinked. He didn't smile big, but he smiled a little, and in the quiet, it felt like enough. The fort was quiet again, blankets above, sleeping bags below, and the soft sound of everyone breathing a little slower. Granny T turned the lantern down until it looked like a tiny golden star. She reached out and gave the closest sleeping bag a gentle pat. Good, she murmured. That's better. Then, in her softest voice, close your eyes, my loves. You're safe. You're loved. You're home.